Hi, and welcome to InFocus. This is Jabbar Al-Obaidi. In this episode, I have with me Sam Pumagarden. He is the chair of the Bridgewater Citizen for Civility and Respect, BCCR, and Cheryl Phillips. She is the co-chair of BCCR, and Vernon Domingo is a member of BCCR. Welcome, friends, and let's start the conversation. And what's the significant role for BCCR in these present times in terms of so many, the COVID-19 and its big impact on the community of colors, and we covered that before, and also about what's happening in terms of racism, whether that's systematic racism or institutional racism or cultural racism. So could you enlighten us on the role of BCCR in this case? Sam?
I'd be happy to start. We started, as you noted, in 2016 in response to a couple of hate incidents that were witnessed in our local towns. And we decided that we needed to speak out against these incidents of hate. And early on, one of the things we accomplished was to work with the town council to accept and get behind a proclamation declaring that Bridgewater should be a town where civil discourse is expected and promoted, and that we would not be a town where any hate speech would be tolerated. And the council approved that proclamation, and it's now posted in the Academy building. And thanks to the efforts of some of our members, including Vernon and others, the proclamation now is posted in many of our local businesses. So that was our beginning. And then over the intervening years, we have also conducted many standouts in opposition to incidents of hate, whether anti-Semitic, anti-racist, whether local or international. We've gotten involved with bystander training so that we can give people strategies for how to respond if they see or witness an incident of hate speech. And recently we have morphed a little bit more into the anti-racism focus because it fits right in with our goals of...
So Sam, may I just answer this question? So proclamation and for the BCCR, and also the laudable and very important actions and lectures and things. What are the changes since 2016 and up to today's conversation? Have you noticed any real impacts, changes that people really change behavior, attitude, or what have you?
Well, I'll go first and then I'll let Vernon and Shirley answer that too. But are you asking in terms of whether our influence has caused people to change?
Yes, impacts. You know, influence sometimes is very hard to get, but the impacts that it can be measured. But you know, because you have done over the years a lot of great things, and so I would like to give our audience an opportunity to understand that this is not just walk word. This is actually walk the words and also bring it into action and into materialization. Go ahead.
I just think in the big picture, I think we've had a significant influence on people in the town, the population in general, and specifically our political leaders, our counselors, our town manager, to become more aware of all the issues dealing with civil rights and speech and now more on racism. So I think we are a constant presence, sort of, to use the expression, in people's face, to pay attention to these issues. And that perhaps has been one of our biggest influences. And
so is this constant presence also on the people's minds in terms of action, Vernon?
I think, I agree with Sam that we've had quite a significant impact. I think Bridgewater now is seen as a town that has a community that really cares about social justice issues, willing to take a stand and try to change systems. And that's ultimately what we want to do. So it's been very gratifying. I've lived in this town since 1985. And to see the idea that people can have discourse about these issues, about issues of anti-discrimination and all of these issues that divide us. And I think what we have done is open an avenue for people to have discussions about equality and anti-discrimination.
Yeah. And Phillips, what do you think, Phil, about that? Shirley, I'm sorry. What do you think?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah. What do you think of what just heard from your colleagues?
I think my colleagues are right on target, because I think BCCR is a barometer by which Bridgewater is going to measure its effective change in behaviors. First of all, I think the exposure response has been that people are more conscious of their racism, the insidious racism that people face. And I think being able to come to the table and talk about it and admit it, rather than deny that it exists. And with BCCR, I think has helped to ameliorate some of those anxieties people feel when they do come forward to talk about it.
Now, what are the most important tools for the BCCR in terms of learning process and also engaging the community? That's really effective tools that you found that you want to always do, or come up with some creative approaches to that. Anyone can jump to that.
I think there are some short-term, immediate strategies. The standouts have been very effective and very well received by our community in Bridgewater and in the region. But the long-term ones are the ones that we especially are working on, trying to create institutional change, which Sam, I'm sure, is much more key to those institutional changes that we want.
Yes, go ahead, Sam.
In terms of the institutional change, I think one of the focuses now that we have is to try to get our political leaders, our council and our town manager, to be involved in these processes and make change where change needs to be made. So we have asked the council, for example, to consider buying into the anti-racism pledge, to start looking at town boards and their policies and procedures, and whether or not there are any discriminatory practices that we may not even have looked at. And then we're hoping that the counselors and the manager will have a listening session and hear people's views on what's happening in Bridgewater. We hope to look at the police department and see if they're operating at the highest level, and to get some of their statistics to make sure that they are following recommended practices and so on. So we're trying to get, again, work within the system to start looking at things that maybe haven't been looked at before.
But Sam, yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I would think of it as a holistic approach, not just looking at one area, but looking at a cross section of municipal offices and rules and regulations and policies, which are going to be affected by the kinds of things where BCR has set out to do. The holistic approach to looking at evaluating where we are, where do we want to go, where do we need to be.
Okay, so Vernon, where are you now in terms of the action that our friend correctly covered?
Yeah, I think right now, while at the same time we've had larger issues of anti-discrimination and anti-hate that we focused on very specifically, trying to keep groups that have evil intentions coming into the area. We want to have a good, honest, open town. But right now we're focusing on having our town officials address these issues. And that's what we refer to as really the overarching change. So that when we as members of this organization are no longer here, we hope that the organization will continue and that future generations will see that change has been made. Change is difficult, and we understand that, but we have to push as members of this community really believing that we can make a difference. And I think we can.
Changes are always difficult indeed. Now, you have some forums and also some training and workshops. Is this just focusing on the like negative or positive or active bystanders, so people they can act when there's something going on and they feel that they need to intervene at least peacefully and verbally?
Vernon, you want to take that one? You're a trainer.
My wife, particularly Beryl Domingo, is very well institutionalized in that, and she works with that. We are very pleased that one of our earliest programs was held actually in the Academy building itself, where people came and learned techniques that when they saw something that was wrong, to intervene peacefully, but to try to make a difference and to try to use the situations as education for everyone, so that we have that community of respect and dignity for everyone in it. So I think that's really very important when it comes from those levels in society. And I'm very excited about those types of programs.
So Bridgewater Citizen for Civility and Respect, it's not alone, right, in terms of organization and communication in Bridgewater. If it's not alone, are there any effective affiliation with other organizations that they are trying to address the same thing? I mean, what you're doing is very honorable and is very important, is very critical, it is really highly needed. So I'm asking this question because if you know broader your affiliation base, I think that also will bring more probably results that people start to acknowledge and also to take part of. Sam?
Yes, I can bring you up to date on other groups, and some of them you know about as well, I think. First, there's a group called DICE, Diversity and Inclusion for Community Empowerment, which started about 1.5 years ago in response to some incidents in the local schools. Cleone Mainville is the coordinator leader of that group, which now has over 400 Facebook members. And they are focused a lot on education and focusing on the schools. So they've become a great resource in town. And then I think one of your recent shows, you had the Stand Up for Justice group, which just recently formed and has been holding the rallies on the Common and keeping the anti-racism movement in the public eye. Last week, I had an opportunity to meet with 2 ladies from Taunton who have started a group there called True Diversity. So, and there's work going on within the school district itself, within the Bridgewater-Raynham district, which is going to be forming a diversity and inclusion committee. So the reach is spreading. We have multiple groups now operating all with similar focuses, but with a little different approaches.
Now, we have this, again, it's not really new, but it is stronger than ever. Black Lives Matter. What's your role in that to endorse and also to take it to further stages?
I think that's a very important part of what we're doing right now. Under this climate around the country, it's important that citizens stand up. And we're very pleased that with the response in our town to when we stand with signs like that and cars pass us in downtown Bridgewater honking their approval of that, I think that starts a conversation within the car and within families so that they talk about the issues of racism and realize how important Black Lives Matter and how they are imperiled on a daily basis. And we want to be part of that conversation to move non-racism forward.
Sharon, do you want to elaborate on this, please?
I would just like to comment that I agree with the position that Vernon has taken, but I think we were about setting the barometer for these conversations even before Black Lives Matter has become, you know, in the paramount in the public's eye. Because what we were doing before we're setting the stage for this by having people engage in differences on a political first, by having people across the aisles talking on a political level. And I think that's where it begins. Where in legislature does it begin? That's where legislation is made. That's what is dictated what happens on the local level. So I agree that having those kind of conversations began earlier than the Black Lives Matter within the last year.
That's right. So, and in effect, I'm glad you said that, Shirley, because the pledge, the anti-racism pledge, which we've developed, which is on the website for BCCR, we urge people to go onto that. Hundreds of people have signed on to that. I think we developed that before the very sad Floyd situation occurred, way before that. But the idea was to get this out so people can consider, think about where they stand, and then take a stand against racism publicly. So we're very pleased with that pledge, and we urge people to go online and make their statements felt so that we are a larger community.
So, since the killing of George Floyd, of course, this also, the conversation pick up, but now, people, I think, acknowledge the need to talk about racism.
In addition to what I already mentioned about the presence before the town council, and to ask of them certain things so that we can move forward. So getting them to buy into the pledge, hopefully as a council, to take a look at oversight that can be provided to town boards and the police and the fire, and to open up a listening session. Interestingly, I was on a Zoom call a little before this one about school issues, and the school committee is thinking about having a similar listening session to hear from residents about what is going on, what their perceptions are of racial issues and social justice issues. And the school committee chairperson indicated that he would like to connect with the town council of Bridgewater, the selectmen in Raynham. So the connections are broadening. And I've also been in touch with Bridgewater State University's new Committee on Racial Justice, Mary Grant, Carolyn Petrosino. I've not talked to Davidi, who's the other chair, but I've asked them to make sure that the towns and the town council and the school committee are appraised and aware of what events they're going to conduct. So we're trying to make this a bit of a regional effort.
Thank you, Sam. And then there's a call for reforming, defunding the police. What's your understanding to that? And there's a lot of question and conversation about this, especially when it's come to defunding the police. Anyone of you can jump, please.
Well, I think the immediate thing is, this is an opportunity for police departments in Bridgewater around the country to do some deep thinking and deep analysis of their procedures and policies. And so that's why we're encouraging our police department, in particular in our town, where we at least have some input, to say, think about these, talk about these issues. They're important. We don't think they've been talked about enough in many circles, but we've seen the outcome when you don't talk about it, and that's the tragedy that happened to George Floyd. So our department, other police departments should really be doing some self-analysis. That's important for us.
In terms of COVID-19, people under stressing conditions and things, probably sometimes you hear some unpleasant comments, slurs, and very distressing situation. What's the answer, in your opinion, as expert in this area now through the organization, and you are great organizers? What's the best response if something happened like that in a grocery store or in a pharmacy or just in the street or the limited open restaurants?
Our organization started precisely because we have an incident in the Bridgewater post office where someone was yelled at, someone who was assumed to be Muslim and was yelled, and it was a horrible situation, and no one intervened. So now we're asking through these programs if people can pre-think, what will I do if a situation like that arises? How will I try to calm things down? How will I try to get people to acknowledge that what they're doing is wrong, and that's not the society that we want for no one else?
I think it's one of the goals of BCCR is to educate the public, not only those persons who are part of BCCR, but educate the community on how to respond in a situation such as that. It's becoming all too prevalent to have those occasions occur. What we need to do through these conversations that we are having is make people aware of how to respond, when to respond, and where to respond, so that it can have an effective change on the persons who are producing such kind of behaviors.
Well, how you look to that and how you're going to shift your program to focus on this conversation so you can address this with the young people, our younger people, and also with faculty and also the larger community in the Bridgewater and surrounding cities.
We are having an impact on the local school district because they are looking to implement some training for teachers, in-service training with regard to cultural appropriateness, cultural diversity. Some of that, of course, is all dependent on how the school's open and how much funding is available. There's a lot of hurdles to jump in the next few weeks for all the school districts, but assuming those hurdles are jumped, then there will be some training provided, which will be invaluable. And I'm sure that the university with its committee will also be providing some training. And I think the Bridgewater University Police Department probably has to be involved in that and having their practices examined so that students on campus feel safe.
So I'm assuming BCCR will really be busy in the next coming month.
Well, it's mostly keeping the heat on, shall we say, to make sure
I think keeping the heat on is very important. Now, what's the three of you, what's your message to our community and to our audience?
I mean, I'll start off by saying our message firstly is that these are important issues of our day. They don't just depend on things happening in Washington or at high levels. They depend on people having these discussions within their families, firstly around the dinner table, within relatives, within neighborhoods, and then in the town generally, with the bottom line of creating a non-discriminatory society where everyone is welcome. That's the goal.
I'd just like to say that I see BCR as being the catalyst for helping to ameliorate some of the anxiety behaviors that are caused in the communities by raising consciousness of their own behaviors. And to do this, BCR can help educate people. They can provide the avenues where people can voice what their opinions are, what their anxieties are, and address those anxieties in a safe place.
I think people need to be willing to learn, willing to read, willing to ask questions, not just jumping to conclusions, but finding out why the Black people feel the way they do, and finding out about our town government and are we doing the best we can. So there's a lot of learning to go on and a lot of talking to go on, and hopefully we've encouraged people to talk with each other in respectful ways.
People often feel that they cannot make a change. And I'm an immigrant to this country, and I believe, especially in the United States, that individuals working together can make a change. And on that basis, that's what our group started. I should say also, we're not the only group in towns. A lot of towns around us are doing some of the similar work, and we applaud that.
I would just kind of piggyback on what Vernon said. The word that came to my mind was inertia. It's hard to get people to move, to get in motion, especially when on the surface everything looks fine. People don't generally see Bridgewater as a town where there are any problems. Most people feel our police are doing a good job, and I think that's largely true. But sometimes seeing that big picture that everything looks great prevents people from really delving into things which may exist below the surface and need to be looked at. So I think for us to get people out of that inertia and get moving and looking at things is important.
People being able to name it. Once you can name it, you can claim it. It doesn't exist if you don't name it. If you don't admit that it exists, it doesn't exist. So I think that's moving people to the point to be cognizant of what is it that's keeping us or holding us back or keeping us in a position where we are in such an anxiety state.
Well, my friend, thank you so much for this fascinating conversation, and thank you for watching InFocus.